This is The Public Interest. Thank you for joining us. As usual, this is a weekly discussion forum which provides the opportunity to local journalists to engage the President on matters of national importance. As usual, taking time out for us this morning is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Gomati.
We have two journalists from the local media fraternity joining us this morning. They are to my extreme left, Ms. Shunza from the National Communications Network and Ms. Thandeka Percival from Stabroek News. Good morning and welcome, ladies.
Good morning. Thank you.
Sir, this morning we want to focus on domestic security. And recently there have been reports of serious crimes like the execution of Mr. Ramnarayan Etwaru, a farmer from Berbice, and the fatal Rio Club shooting. The People's Progressive Party, in a statement published on September 26th in the local media, said, and I quote, "Criminals are here, there, and everywhere. They are omnipresent," end of quote. Even as the Guyana Police Force scales up its operations, how do you believe that we can tackle crime?
Well, there's no one type of crime, and we have to look at the causes of crime, and this has been a matter that's been engaging the coalition from the start of our administration. Many of the crimes we see, the most serious crimes, have their origin, of course, in that dark, oppressive period when it was clear that drug lords were committing offenses in Guyana, and I regard narco-trafficking as the mother of all crimes because the huge amount of money that is generated in narco-trafficking could be used to order executions, to recruit rogues who could carry out other crimes, what they call foot soldiers. They can get young people to sell the drugs. They can actually bribe law enforcement officers. And we need to understand the role that narco-trafficking has played, particularly between 2000 and 2015. As you know, earlier this month, September, we discovered an aircraft in the Rupununi, and it is quite clear that it entered Guyana airspace illegally, and it may have been carrying some contraband commodities. We don't know exactly what. But as long as drugs keep coming into this country, it will be very difficult to control crime. Narco-trafficking is the mother of all crimes. So that is one source, I think, of execution murders. You must also remember that a lot of the murders taking place are actually the result of interpersonal violence, domestic cases, sometimes land issues, as we had in the case of Blackbush Polder. This is apparently, some personal vendetta, sometimes husband and wife, and then we have other crimes taking place, like there might be small gangs. There might 2 or 3 boys come together, arm themselves with a gun. And again, when you're talking about gun running or illegal firearms, you're talking about the impact that narco-trafficking has had on society. Once you have narco-trafficking, you're going to have gun running, you're going to have money laundering, and you're going to have execution murders. So there's no one answer, but we must look at the causes, and this is what the administration is working on, looking at causation.
Thank you, sir. Journalists, you can now pose your questions on the topic.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, we're seeing most of these it is perceived that most of these criminal activities are taking place at the community level. Will we see the administration focusing a lot more attention on strengthening community policing groups in terms of recruiting more persons within the community to watch out for these instances, as well as affording them with more resources to help in the fight against crime?
Yes, to a point. We have to look at crime at all 3 levels. Definitely at the highest level, the national level, we realize that narco-trafficking is a transnational crime. The government of Guyana and, of course, the Guyana Police Force have responsibilities to ensure that Guyana's land space, that the borders are more secure, and that we don't have narco-trafficking, gun running, trafficking in person, and so on. At the community level, we need to strengthen our police stations and the ability of the police force to patrol these areas effectively. The police have to have better all-terrain vehicles to go into the hinterland areas and rural areas. They have to have better maritime capability to work along the coast. They have to have an aviation capability. Guyana is, after all, bigger than England and Scotland combined. It's not easy. But at that level, we have been responding to crime. There are now mounted police in Rupununi, but Rupununi is bigger than Costa Rica. So we need to put many more horses there. We're going to be putting horses in the quarantine to patrol the back dams, to patrol these open areas. So we're not relying purely on patrol cars and motorcycles. We're responding in various ways, appropriate ways, to make sure that the policemen could get where the crimes occur. At the community level, yes, we have the problem of interpersonal violence. It is very difficult to prevent a husband and wife from fighting, or boyfriend, girlfriend, and sometimes people have problems with their neighbors because the pigs are rooting up their crops, and these things occur. Community policing is part of the response. It's not a whole response. I want to remind you that in October, a team from the United Kingdom will be coming here to resume the work that they started since 1999 in the form of the Security Sector Reform Action Plan. As you know, the previous administration had rejected the plan even after the head of the Presidential Secretariat had affixed his signature to it. I met Prime Minister David Cameron last year at the United Nations, and I have been in discussion with the United Kingdom government, and they have agreed to send a team to re-engage with the government of Guyana. So we will be tackling it at various levels, at the international level, at the national level, at the community level, and when it comes down to the household, again, we are looking at ensuring that women and children particularly are protected through a more effective community policing mechanism. We are very worried when we get cases of incest. Sometimes these are statutory rape, is not, between consenting adults. These are matters of rape. They occur in many rural and hinterland communities, probably urban communities as well. So these are crimes, and sometimes they lead to murder, sometimes they lead to arson. Quite recently we see maybe a husband or a wife who might have some problem at home, burning down the house. So these are types of crimes which could be identified and hopefully prevented at the level of the family and the community. So we're taking action at all levels. Yes, sorry.
If we were to bring it back to what you said about narco-trafficking being responsible for quite a large percentage of our crime. 16 months into your government, there is no evidence, at least that I'm aware of, that you've been able to dismantle a major drug network or charge their key figures. Why is this so, having recognized the role that narco-trafficking plays?
Well, you're talking about what we have done in 16 months, but you cannot ignore the fact that this has been built up over the last 16 years. So we have networks, we have evidence that aircraft have been coming into the country, and what we have done, we've created something called the NANA, National Anti-Narcotics Agency, under Major General Attlee. We are having more frequent engagements with we established the National Security Committee, which every week examines the conduct of the Police Anti-Narcotics Unit, the Guyana Revenue Authority Anti-Narcotics Unit, as well as the Custom Anti-Narcotics Unit. And we are using these engagements along with our international partners, particularly the DA of the USA, to interdict narco-trafficking. So it's unfair to say that, because as you know, there was a huge bust in United Kingdom, perhaps the biggest bust, and Guyana government cooperated in that matter. They've been bust in Jamaica, Guyana government is cooperating. So I think your statement is unfair, because we have set up the institutions, and I think recently, you know that the National Drug Strategy Master Plan has been reissued. We are now conducting an investigation into an aircraft coming into our airspace, and we are taking other measures to ensure that the narco trade is brought to an end. I'm personally involved in chairing the National Security Committee every week, and this is our commitment. We're not going to take the extreme measures that you hear about in other countries like the Philippines, but we are definitely going to bring narco trafficking to an end. We do not have the resources, the assets. We do not have the aircraft to patrol our borders. We do not have the ships to patrol our sea space. We do not have the vehicles to control the land space to bring these crimes to an end. But we are working on those things with our partners.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. If I could bring your attention to what some are considering a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. A notorious drug suspect, now convict, Barry Dataram, recently fled the country just before a guilty verdict was delivered. Do you believe that your law enforcement failed in their duty? And what is being done to locate him and also prevent similar accused individuals from doing the same?
Well, Mr. Dataram is not a Guyanese citizen, actually. You may be surprised to learn. So he's not traveling, my information, he's not traveling on a Guyana passport. After his disappearance, we were unaware of his disappearance, of course, and we will continue to work with our partners in the Caribbean community to locate him and to bring him to justice. If he is in Suriname as is suspected, we can speak to the Commissioner of Police has already been instructed to try to ascertain his whereabouts in neighboring countries. But he's not using a Guyana passport, that much we know. As far as the other person are concerned, there is a watch list, and as I said in my comments in the previous question, it is physically impossible to control every kilometer of Guyana's border and coastline with our present resources. We are working on the acquisition of surveillance aircraft. We are placing mounted police in the wide open areas, particularly in Region 9. We are acquiring all-terrain vehicles and surveillance equipment. We're doing our best in the circumstances, but this is a problem that has developed over the last 16 years, not 16 months.
Shunza.
Therefore, Mr. President, based on what you've just stated, you believe that the criticisms that's out there, mainly by the opposition, is unfair given the circumstances that Guyana is currently facing as it relates to fighting crime?
Let me make it clear. We do not ignore criticism.
Okay.
And we respond to criticism by trying to solve problems. So I welcome criticism, but it is quite clear when, for example, the former Minister of Home Affairs speaks, he has been receiving over his tenure over a dozen reports and recommendations from the British government. The previous administration actually received a multi-million pound sterling security sector reform action plan and rejected it. So the damage was done. We're repairing the damage. So from that point of view, yes, I would agree with you. The criticism is misplaced, the criticism is unfair, but we are not unaware of the criticism, and we are working to make Guyana a safer place.
Thandeka?
You're working to make Guyana a safer place, but despite statistics which suggest that the actual numbers of serious crimes are decreasing, there is a sense of insecurity within the public, primarily according to them for two reasons. One, because they're noting their neighbors and relatives being victims of crimes which they consider serious, and two, because they believe that the police is basically bullying the citizens. There's actually a hashtag now police bullyism in Guyana. How do you help the citizens to feel secure? Even as you work to make them actually safe, how do you work to give them that sense of security as well?
Well, you can see the response from the government, from the Ministry of Public Security, and from the law enforcement agencies. We are taking a holistic approach to security. In the instance of, say, traffic, we have launched Operation Safeway. This has been an area, we've noticed that many children, many pedestrians have been hit down, and we have launched Operation Safeway. We are acquiring more breathalyzer equipment, we're acquiring more speed guns, we're putting more traffic policemen on the road. We're looking at areas that have been affected by fatal accidents, and we are responding to those. In other areas, as I said, dealing with other crimes, we are trying to recruit many more police officers and give them better training. Policemen have to be deployed to areas, particularly in the hinterland, which has been the scene of some of the violent crimes, particularly in mining areas. We have to provide them with more boats, and we have to provide them with all-terrain vehicles. We realize that there might be a problem with training of police officers, and this has received more attention, that some officers have been separating themselves from the service. I don't know the rate. It used to be over 200 a year. So when you see police force recruits, 300, policemen, sometimes 200 of them leave by the end. Not the same ones, of course. Some of the older ones would probably leave by the end of the year. So we look at the conditions on which policemen are recruited and on which they serve. This includes their salaries, of course. So we have to deal with it holistically. The hinterland policing, hinterland rural policing, urban policing, traffic, interpersonal violence, and other forms of criminal activity. It's not going to be solved within a week or two, but how do we convince the population that better is being done? Yes, we do have more frequent police press conferences involving the police commissioner himself. We do involve the citizens in community policing and neighborhood policing. And we have been engaging different regions. We've asked for the police structure to be modified. A lot of the structures you see in the police force now have been inherited over 50, 60 years ago. So there's one single police commander located in Bartica who's responsible for everything from the Aruka right down to Achiwib. So we are looking at creating more police divisions so that each police division, divisional commander will have a more specific area of focus. So changes are taking place, and we feel that in the fullness of time, and within a very short time, that there's going to be a better level of policing. There are going to be more policemen on the ground. The British Security Sector Reform Advisory Team is going to be coming next month. And I'm very confident that there is going to be improvement. But we are putting in place many of the measures which have been rejected in the past administration. And we're thinking outside of the box. We're going to have a bigger mounted police branch. We're going to have other assets so that police can, in cooperation with the other law enforcement agencies, control crime. There's one area of security which we should not ignore. That is what is taking place in the mining area, the logging area. And we are going to establish a corps of wardens who are going to police the mines, who are going to police wildlife areas, who are going to police forestry areas, who are going to help to enforce the law against persons who are damaging the environment and stealing our wildlife. So all of these law enforcement measures are being reviewed and revised, and I am very confident that we are on the right track.
Thank you, sir. We do have to move off of the topic now, and I'm glad that you mentioned the environment in your last sentence. Sir, you recently established the Department of Environment, to give more focus to sustainable development and the green agenda. On Saturday, we will be observing National Tree Day. That is October 1. Sir, how do you see us balancing the exploitation of natural resources, even as we pursue a green agenda and the protection of our national patrimony?
The official launch of the Department of the Environment will be symbolically on the 1st of October, which is the start of Agriculture Month. It is National Tree Day, and we, as the indigenous people say, trees hold up the sky, and if you cut down the trees, the sky will fall. It is not an anecdote, it is true, and we have committed, recently we committed to an agreement with Germany to establish or to extend our protected areas, and I have directed that every region should have a protected area, whether it's wetlands. Of course, the biodiversity in wetlands is different from that in the savanna or in the mountains or the forests. So, in general, if you are aware of what I said to the United Nations General Assembly last week, I pointed out that we are now on a green pathway. We feel that the green agenda is not only going to protect our environment and our biodiversity, but is also going to provide employment for young people. It's also going to give us a lead in ecotourism and also help us to solve some of our energy problems in adopting green policies, solar energy, biomass, hydro, and other forms of energy generation. So all in all, we are on a green pathway. We feel that the adoption of the green agenda is a correct one. Some of the developed countries have actually come on board and have assisted us. And I think Guyana will be a better place for being more environmentally conscious. It's not just about low carbon development strategy, it's all about our biodiversity and energy and other forms of other measures of implementing that green agenda. So I'm very happy with that, and it's what I told the United Nations. This is what I told the Caribbean. And as I often like to say, that Guyana's land space, combined with Suriname's land space, is greater than that of Germany. And we do have a very precious resource. So that's where the future is. It's a green future.
Thank you, sir. Journalists, you can now pose your questions off of the topic.
If I may, the Guyana Public Service Union has applied for conciliation through the Ministry of Labor. In fact, the United Labor Movement, for the first time in as many years, has met and dispatched a letter to you asking for a meeting and accusing your government of several labor violations. One, have you received the letter? Two, do you understand or do you believe that they have legitimate concerns? And having offered the public servants and the teachers a differentiated pay increase based on performance, will the same be done for ministers in the new year?
Well, to answer the last question first, no ministerial revision of salaries is envisaged. As far as the trade union is concerned, yes, I have received a letter. I have a Ministry of Social Protection, and I would urge that the trade unions engage the ministers first. It would be imprudent for me to overrule or override or try to deal with the unions without first giving the minister responsible, and there are two ministers in that ministry. It is important for the trade unions to engage her first, and of course, the minister who has specific responsibility for industrial relations. As far as the actual conciliation is concerned, there is a menu of measures, and I do not believe that that menu has been exhausted. In fact, the talks with the GPSU, which you mentioned specifically, have not been discontinued. We have not disengaged. It was explained to the union that because of the government's preparation of the 2017 budget, time was of the essence, and we needed to bring the talks to a certain point by September so that the budget could be prepared, civil servants could get what was due to them in terms of retroactive pay, and we could continue the talks. In the meantime, nobody discontinued the talks. What we did is that in response to the demand made by the GPSU, we put an offer on the table. And there are other things that GPSU is asking for, like the bunching and review of the salaries, review of the allowances. These things have not been completed as yet. But at the pace of discussions, we were not confident that the discussion would be completed in time to allow the government to pay attention to its budget for 2017. So the GPSU is fully aware that these matters are still on the table and the discussions are continuing. It is not a final offer. It is an offer which allows the government to get on with this business and allows the public servants to enjoy the increase in pay to which we feel that they're entitled. But we are still talking to the union, and there's no reason for conciliation at this stage because we're still engaged. It is not as though the talks are deadlocked. But we need to move ahead, and we can't have the public servants suffering because of the slow pace of negotiation. So as far as I'm concerned, the talks are continuing, and I would urge the GPSU and the Department of the Public Service and the combined negotiating team, which involves the Ministry of Finance, to continue talks so that all issues, not just money, all of the issues, the allowances and the bunching and other things could be, non-salary benefits could be discussed.
Shunza.
Therefore, Mr. President, the union accusing the government of imposing, would you say the union accusing the government of imposing these salary increases is wrong? So to speak, their statement that the government is imposing these salary increases without going through the collective bargaining and the right procedures.
I think we need to be specific about which union we're talking about here. The Guyana Teachers Union has made that accusation because they've been asked to accept the same increase as the public service without the benefit of negotiation.
Well,
for which their agreement, just clarifying, which their agreement affords them the opportunity to separate from GPSU.
And I also think that the GPSU had some concerns with the government's imposition.
I am not aware of any imposition. To the best of my knowledge, there was a GPSU team and a government of Guyana team involved in negotiations. The GPSU put certain demands on the table, and the government responded. And at the time that the offer was made, the government had reached its highest point through all of the negotiations.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Just one more, so we just have time for one more.
Why have the members of the Public Procurement Commission not been appointed?
There are some administrative concerns. They have been, I am waiting to swear them in, but there were concerns about the drafting of the TOR. They have been nominated, and as recently as 2 weeks ago, a date and time for the swearing-in ceremony had been announced, but there are some administrative matters which have to be clarified about the TORs. That is all. It is strictly an administrative matter at this point in time.
Shunza, you have the last question.
All right. I want to take your focus to the University of Guyana. The major constraint among students as well as some lecturers is that the University of Guyana does not provide the type of skills to match the demands of the job market for a developing country. How do you think, as a government, we can look to fix this?
Well, people make choices. Students make choices, and sometimes students may want to go into the humanities or the social sciences or the natural sciences, and sometimes they might choose subject areas which they like, but the market does not offer employment in those fields. I'll be addressing the university, I think, in the graduation month after next, and it's a matter of concern. We have, as a government, sought to emphasize the importance of science technology, engineering and mathematics. And if you look to see what is taking place at the level of the National Grade 6 examination, you can see that this is a correct area of focus. And we will be directing more funds and more resources to those subjects. Those are subjects which Guyana needs. If it is to develop the hinterland, if it's to develop mining, it's to develop our natural resources. And there needs to be a shift of focus. But the university itself must understand the needs of the country. Yes, we need lawyers. Yes, we need people in the humanities, but they must take a holistic view at Guyana's needs over the next 10, 20 years. They must take a strategic look at Guyana's educational needs and direct its their resources there. I don't want a weak science or engineering faculty. I want strength there. And the university must do the study first and advise the administration. But it is an issue, and young people, in their choice of subjects, must articulate, their career objectives or their career desires, so that we can have a university which is more responsive to their needs as persons, as human beings, as well as to the national needs in terms of development. But it is a matter that needs to be worked out by the University Council, the Ministry of Education, as well as staff and students of the University of Guyana. I don't believe it is a settled matter, and we need to decide as a country what type of university we're going to have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, journalists. That has brought us to the end of this week's edition of The Public Interest. Do remember to join us next time. Have a blessed day, Guyana. Goodbye.